My wife demanded therapy to fix me, but 10 sessions with Dr. Martinez exposed her manipulation, shattered her control, and saved our marriage. The ultimatum came on a Sunday morning while I was reading the paper, drinking coffee, living my normal weekend routine. She walked into the kitchen with that look. You know the one. The look that says she's been planning this conversation for weeks, probably rehearsing it in front of the bathroom mirror. "We need professional help," she announced, like she was delivering a medical diagnosis. "I've already called Dr. Martinez's office. She has an opening next week." Notice how she said, "We need help," but she'd already made the appointment without consulting me. Classic move. I set down my coffee and looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I'd been married to for 6 years was standing there, arms crossed, jaw set, ready for a fight. But here's the thing, I wasn't going to give her one. Not the kind she expected anyway. 10 sessions, she continued when I didn't immediately respond. That's the minimum Dr. Martinez recommends for couples in crisis. Crisis, that was her word, not mine. Because apparently my refusal to tolerate her screaming fits over trivial things, like leaving dishes in the sink overnight, constituted a marriage crisis. "And if I say no?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Then we're done. I can't live like this anymore." She gestured around our kitchen like it was some kind of war zone instead of the cleanest, most organized space in our neighborhood. I deserve better than someone who won't fight for this relationship. There it was, the manipulation wrapped in martyrdom. I won't fight for the relationship because I won't submit to her emotional outbursts. I won't fight for the relationship because I set boundaries. I won't fight for the relationship because I refuse to apologize for things I didn't do wrong. But you know what? Sometimes the best strategy is to give people exactly what they ask for. Sometimes you let them paint themselves into a corner while you watch from a safe distance. "Fine," I said, taking another sip of my coffee. "Schedule the sessions." The shock on her face was priceless. She'd been geared up for an argument, ready to deploy her full arsenal of tears, accusations, and threats. Instead, I just agreed. It threw her completely off script. "You'll do it?" she stammered. I said, "Fine, didn't I?" I folded my paper neatly and stood up. "But let's be clear about something. I'm not doing this because I think we need it. I'm doing this because you seem convinced we do. So when we go in there, when we sit on that couch and answer questions, remember that this was your idea, your solution, your requirement." The first session was scheduled for the following Thursday, 4 p.m. Dr. Martinez had a small office downtown, the kind with soft lighting and tissue boxes strategically placed on every surface. She was probably in her 50s, with graying hair and the practiced calm of someone who'd heard every sob story in the book. Dr. Martinez began, settling into her chair with her notepad. "What brings you both here today?" Before I could open my mouth, my wife launched into her prepared speech. Oh, she'd rehearsed this one too. About how I'd become distant and cold, about how I never wanted to talk about her problems, about how she felt like she was living with a stranger who didn't care about her feelings. I sat there listening, watching Dr. Martinez's face for reactions. The therapist was good, kept her expression neutral, took notes, nodded at appropriate intervals. But I caught something else, a slight tightening around her eyes when my wife described how I refuse to engage when she tries to discuss issues. When my wife finally finished her monologue, Dr. Martinez turned to me. "And what's your perspective on these concerns?" "I think," I said carefully, "that we have different definitions of productive communication. When she says I don't want to talk about problems, what she means is that I don't respond well to being screamed at. When she says I'm distant, what she means is that I've stopped participating in fights that go nowhere. Can you give me an example of what you mean by fights that go nowhere?" Perfect. I'd been hoping she'd ask. Last month I came home from work and found dirty dishes in the sink. I didn't say anything, just washed them and put them away. She confronted me about it later, saying I was being passive-aggressive by not asking her to clean them. When I explained that I simply handled it myself to avoid conflict, she accused me of making her feel guilty. The argument lasted 2 hours over dishes that were already clean. I saw Dr. Martinez make a note, a longer note than she'd made during my wife's speech. "How did that conversation end?" the therapist asked, with her demanding I apologize for making her feel attacked, even though I never said a word about the dishes in the first place. My wife shifted in her seat. "That's not how it happened. You were clearly irritated." "I was tired," I said calmly. "I worked a 10-hour day and came home to handle household tasks. Being tired isn't the same as being irritated. But your energy was different. You were sending signals." What signals? I turned to face her directly. I walked in, saw dishes, washed dishes, put them away. What signal was I sending other than handling a household chore? Dr. Martinez intervened before my wife could respond. I'm hearing two very different interpretations of the same event. This is actually quite common in couples therapy. She made another note. For our next session, I'd like you both to keep a log of these kinds of interactions. Write down what happened, how you felt, and what you think the other person was feeling. Don't discuss it with each other, just observe and record. As we left the office, my wife was unusually quiet. She'd expected Dr. Martinez to immediately side with her, to validate her version of events and start working on fixing me. Instead, the therapist had asked probing questions and given us homework that would require actual self-reflection. Well? She finally asked as we got to the car. What did you think? I think, I said, unlocking the doors, that the next 9 sessions are going to be very interesting. She didn't respond to that, but I noticed her grip tighten on her purse strap. She was starting to realize that therapy might not go exactly the way she planned. And honestly, I was looking forward to finding out just how wrong she'd been. Session 2 arrived faster than my wife had probably hoped. She'd spent the week furiously scribbling in her journal, the homework Dr. Martinez had assigned, but I noticed she kept closing it whenever I walked into the room. Meanwhile, I'd been documenting everything with the precision of a court reporter, dates, times, exact words spoken. The truth has a funny way of looking different when it's written down in black and white. We settled into the same spots on Dr. Martinez's couch. My wife clutched her journal like it contained state secrets. Well, I had a simple notepad with clean, organized entries. The therapist noticed the difference immediately. How did the observation exercise go for both of you? Dr. Martinez asked, pen poised over her notepad. My wife jumped in first, as usual. It was eye-opening. I realized just how much tension he creates in our home. Even when he's not saying anything, his body language is aggressive. He sighs when I talk. He rolls his eyes, and he has this way of looking at me that makes me feel stupid. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I waited for Dr. Martinez to turn to me. Your observations? The therapist asked. I flipped open my notepad. Monday, 6:15 p.m. She asked if I'd picked up milk on the way home. I said no, I forgot. She responded by saying, of course you did. You never remember anything I ask you to do. I offered to go get milk immediately. She said, don't bother. I'll just add it to the list of things I have to handle myself. The conversation ended there. I didn't sigh, roll my eyes, or speak again until she asked what I wanted for dinner an hour later. Dr. Martinez was writing a lot. And how did you feel during this interaction? Confused. I'd offered an immediate solution to the problem, but the response suggested the milk wasn't actually the issue. What do you think was the real issue? Dr. Martinez asked. Before I could answer, my wife interjected. The real issue is that he doesn't care enough to remember simple requests. It's about consideration, not milk. I see, Dr. Martinez said slowly. She turned back to me. Do you often forget things she asks you to do? According to my notes from this week, she made 17 requests. I completed 14 of them. The 3 I didn't complete were either impossible, like fixing the neighbor's barking dog, or contradictory, like when she asked me to call her mother, but then said she didn't want to deal with family drama right now. The room went quiet. My wife's mouth opened, then closed. Dr. Martinez made several notes. Can you give me another example from your journal? The therapist asked me. Wednesday evening, she mentioned that our friends were having a party this weekend. I asked if she wanted to go. She said, if you want to. I said it was up to her since they were her friends originally. She then accused me of never wanting to socialize and always making her be the one to make social decisions. And how did you respond to that accusation? I reminded her that I'd attended every social event she'd wanted to go to in the past year, including her coworker's baby shower, where I was the only man in attendance. I also pointed out that 3 weeks ago when I suggested we invite people over for dinner, she said she was too stressed to host. Dr. Martinez turned to my wife. Do you remember this conversation about the party? Well, yes, but... And do you recall the baby shower he mentioned? My wife's face was getting red. That's not the point. It's about enthusiasm. He goes to things, but he doesn't want to be there. How do you know he doesn't want to be there? Dr. Martinez asked. I can just tell. It's obvious. Can you give me specific behaviors that indicate his reluctance? My wife faltered. He doesn't talk much at parties. I talk to people, I corrected. I just don't perform enthusiasm. There's a difference between being social and being theatrical. Dr. Martinez set down her pen and leaned forward slightly. I'm noticing a pattern here. There seems to be a lot of interpretation of intent and emotion happening. One person does or says something, and the other person assigns meaning to it beyond what was actually communicated. Exactly, I said. I wash dishes, and suddenly I'm passive-aggressive. I attend social events, but apparently not enthusiastically enough. I offer to solve problems, but that somehow proves I don't care about the problems. That's not fair, my wife protested. You're making me sound crazy. I'm not making you sound like anything. I'm describing what happens. Dr. Martinez held up a hand. Let's pause here. I want to explore something. She looked directly at my wife. How often do you find yourself explaining to him what he's really thinking or feeling? What do you mean? For instance, telling him he doesn't really want to go to a party or that he's being passive-aggressive when he does chores. How often do you correct his stated intentions with what you believe his real intentions are? The silence stretched uncomfortably. My wife fidgeted with her journal. I know him better than anyone, she finally said. I can tell when he's being genuine. But what if you're wrong? Dr. Martinez asked gently. What if he washes dishes because dishes need washing, not because he's making a statement about your housekeeping? Then why doesn't he just say that? I did say that, I interjected, multiple times. You told me I was lying. Dr. Martinez made more notes. I think we need to explore this dynamic further. It seems like there's a pattern of mind reading happening that's creating conflict where none might naturally exist. My wife looked stunned. This clearly wasn't going the way she'd expected. She'd walked in here expecting Dr. Martinez to fix me, to make me more emotionally available, more communicative, more whatever she thought I should be. Instead, the therapist was questioning her interpretations of my behavior. For next week, Dr. Martinez continued, I want to try something different. Instead of assuming intent, I want you both to practice asking for clarification. Instead of, you don't want to be here, try, are you enjoying the party? Instead of, you're being passive-aggressive, try, I noticed you washed the dishes. How are you feeling about household chores lately? As we left the office, my wife was even quieter than last time. She didn't ask for my thoughts on the session. She didn't try to rehash what had happened. She just walked to the car in silence. 8 more sessions, I said as I started the engine. She turned to look at me, and for the first time in months I saw something that looked like uncertainty in her eyes, maybe even fear. The therapist she'd chosen to fix me was starting to ask questions she didn't want to answer. Questions about her own behavior, her own assumptions, her own role in our problems. Yeah, she said quietly. 8 more sessions. But something in her tone told me she was already starting to wonder if that was going to be enough for her. By session 3, the homework had done its job. My wife walked into Dr. Martinez's office looking like someone who'd spent the week discovering uncomfortable truths about herself. Her journal was noticeably thinner this time. Apparently, asking for clarification instead of assuming intent didn't provide as much material for grievances. Dr. Martinez settled into her chair, with what I was starting to recognize as her investigative expression. How did the clarification exercise work for you both? My wife shifted uncomfortably. It was difficult. I found myself wanting to point out what he was really thinking, but then I had to stop and ask instead. And when you asked, what did you discover? That maybe I was wrong sometimes. The admission came out like she was confessing to a crime. Can you give me an example? My wife glanced at me, then back at Dr. Martinez. Friday night, he was quiet during dinner. I was about to tell him he was obviously upset about something, but instead I asked if everything was okay. He said he was just tired from work and was enjoying not having to talk for a few minutes. And how did that feel, hearing his actual reason instead of the one you'd assumed? Stupid, she admitted. Like I'd been creating problems that weren't there. Dr. Martinez turned to me. How was the week for you? Enlightening. Turns out when you ask direct questions, you get direct answers. Revolutionary concept. My wife shot me a look, but Dr. Martinez smiled slightly. I sensed some frustration there. 6 years of being told what I'm thinking and feeling will do that to a person. Let's explore that, Dr. Martinez said, leaning forward. Can you tell me about other areas where you feel misunderstood or misinterpreted? This was the opening I'd been waiting for. Money management. She accuses me of being controlling because I track our expenses and stick to our budget. But when I ask her to help with the budgeting, she says it's too stressful and I should handle it. So I handle it. And then I'm controlling. How do these conversations usually go? They don't. They're lectures. She tells me I'm being cheap when I suggest we shouldn't spend $300 on a purse, but then panics when the credit card bill comes. I'm somehow responsible for both enforcing financial responsibility and for making her feel bad about spending. Dr. Martinez made notes. How do you typically respond to these accusations? I show her the numbers, bank statements, budget spreadsheets, our savings goals. Then she says, I'm being condescending by using facts and figures. My wife's face was getting that familiar red tinge. You do get condescending. You talk to me like I'm stupid. I talk to you like someone who asked a question about our finances. If you ask me why we can't afford something, I explain why we can't afford it. That's not condescension, that's answering your question. Dr. Martinez intervened. Let's look at this pattern. One person asks a question, the other provides factual information, and then the information itself becomes the problem. Does this happen in other areas? Constantly, I said. She asked why I didn't call her during my lunch break. I explained that I was in back-to-back meetings and ate at my desk. Suddenly, I'm making excuses and not prioritizing our relationship. But normal people make time for their spouse, my wife protested. Normal people also understand that some days are busier than others, I replied. And normal people don't interrogate their spouse about every 15-minute gap in communication. Dr. Martinez was writing furiously now. How often would you say you check in with each other during a typical day? My wife answered first. Not enough. Maybe once or twice. I text her every morning when I get to work, call during lunch if I can, and text when I'm leaving the office. That's a minimum of 3 contacts per day for someone I'm going to see in a few hours anyway. And this feels insufficient to you? Dr. Martinez asked my wife. It feels obligatory, like he's checking boxes instead of actually wanting to connect. What would actual connection look like to you? Spontaneous calls asking how my day is going, showing interest in my life. I couldn't help but laugh. I ask how your day was every single evening when I get home. Your standard response is fine or you wouldn't understand. When I try to follow up with specific questions, you say I'm being nosy. Dr. Martinez held up her hand. I'm seeing another pattern here. There seem to be very specific expectations that haven't been clearly communicated. And when those expectations aren't met, the interpretation is that it's due to lack of caring rather than lack of clarity. Exactly, I said. I'm supposed to read her mind, and when I guess wrong, it proves I don't love her enough. That's not what I'm saying, my wife insisted. Then what are you saying? Dr. Martinez asked her. Because I'm hearing that his actions don't match your internal expectations, but I'm not hearing what those expectations are or how he's supposed to know them. My wife was quiet for a long moment. I shouldn't have to spell out everything. If he cared, he'd know. Know what, specifically? How to make you feel loved. Dr. Martinez set down her pen. Have you ever told him directly how you feel loved? Not what he's doing wrong, but what specifically makes you feel cared for? Another long silence. I thought it was obvious, my wife finally said. But it's not obvious to him. And when he doesn't do these unspoken things, you interpret it as him not caring. Do you see how this creates an impossible situation? I watched my wife's face as the reality sank in. She'd been creating tests I didn't know I was taking, then punishing me for failing them. Let's try something, Dr. Martinez continued. Instead of assuming he should know what you need, what if you told him? And instead of interpreting his actions through the lens of caring versus not caring, what if you accepted them at face value? But what if he doesn't want to do the things I need? Then you have a real conversation about compatibility. But right now, you're having arguments about imaginary problems based on unspoken expectations. As we left that session, my wife was practically vibrating with discomfort. The therapist she'd chosen to fix me had spent another hour pointing out flaws in her logic, her communication, and her expectations. This isn't what I thought therapy would be like, she said as we reached the car. What did you think it would be like? I thought she'd help you understand how to be a better husband. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. We both knew what was happening. Dr. Martinez was peeling back layers of assumption and interpretation to reveal the actual dynamics of our relationship, and what she was finding wasn't a husband who needed fixing. It was a wife who'd been creating problems where none existed. 7 more sessions to go. But I had a feeling my wife was starting to wish she'd never made that appointment. Session 4 was when everything fell apart. Not our marriage, that had been crumbling under the weight of her unrealistic expectations for years. No. What fell apart was her carefully constructed narrative about who was the problem in our relationship. She walked into Dr. Martinez's office with defensive energy. The homework from the previous week, communicating needs directly instead of expecting mind reading, had clearly not gone well for her. How did the direct communication exercise work? Dr. Martinez asked. My wife launched in immediately. It doesn't work when the other person doesn't want to listen. I told him exactly what I needed, and he still didn't do it right. Can you give me an example? I told him I needed him to ask about my day with genuine interest. So, he started asking follow-up questions, but I could tell he was just checking boxes. It felt fake. Dr. Martinez turned to me. How did you experience these conversations? I asked her how her day went. She said, fine. I asked what she did at work. She gave me detailed office drama. I asked clarifying questions to show I was listening. She got upset and said I was interrogating her. So, you did ask follow-up questions? Multiple questions about her projects, her key workers, her schedule. Everything I could think of to show interest. Dr. Martinez looked back at my wife. He asked multiple follow-up questions about your day. But this felt fake to you? Yes, because I could tell he didn't really care. He was just doing it because I asked him to. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. So, let me get this straight. You asked me to show interest in your day. I asked multiple detailed questions about your day, but because my tone wasn't enthusiastic enough, it doesn't count. It has to be genuine. It was genuine. I was genuinely trying to do what you asked me to do. But you were only doing it because I asked. Dr. Martinez held up her hand. Let's pause here. You asked him to show more interest in your day. He responded by asking detailed questions, but because he was doing it in response to your request rather than spontaneously, it felt fake to you. When you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous, my wife said, her voice getting higher. I'm not trying to make it sound ridiculous. I'm trying to understand the logic, because real caring shouldn't have to be taught. There it was. The impossible standard she'd been holding me to for years. I was supposed to automatically know what she needed, when she needed it, and how she needed it delivered. But everyone has different ways of showing care, Dr. Martinez said gently. What feels caring to one person might feel insufficient to another. That's why communication is important. You don't understand, my wife said, desperation creeping in. If I have to tell him how to love me, then it's not really love. So in your view, he should intuitively know exactly how to make you feel loved. And anytime he doesn't get it right, it means he doesn't care enough. Yes. No, I don't know. My wife's voice cracked. This is all wrong. This isn't how therapy is supposed to go. How is therapy supposed to go? You're supposed to help him understand what he's doing wrong. You're supposed to make him see how his behavior affects me. You're supposed to fix him. The room went silent. Dr. Martinez set down her pen and looked directly at my wife. I'm not here to fix anyone. I'm here to help couples understand their dynamics. And what I'm seeing is a pattern where one person has created impossible standards that no human being could meet. My wife's face went white, then red. I'm not. You're supposed to be neutral. You've created a situation where your husband cannot win. If he doesn't ask about your day, he doesn't care. If he asks but not enthusiastically enough, he's going through the motions. If he changes based on your feedback, it's not genuine. There's no correct response. But I have needs, my wife shouted, tears flowing. I have emotional needs that aren't being met. You absolutely do have needs, but needs have to be reasonable and communicable. What you're describing isn't needs. It's expecting someone else to manage your emotions in ways they cannot possibly predict. That's when my wife completely lost it. She screamed. You don't know anything. He's manipulated you just like he manipulates everyone else. She turned to me with fury. You planned this, didn't you? You knew this would happen. I looked at her calmly. I didn't plan anything. I just agreed to come to therapy like you demanded. Dr. Martinez intervened. I think we need individual sessions. There are personal patterns here that might be better addressed separately. When my wife finally calmed down, Dr. Martinez explained her recommendation. So, you're giving up on us too, my wife said quietly. I'm not giving up. I'm suggesting individual work might help both of you understand your own patterns first. As we left, my wife didn't speak to me at all, but I caught her looking at me with something that might have been uncertainty, maybe even the beginning of self-awareness. 6 more sessions scheduled, but the real work was just beginning. The individual sessions started the week after my wife's meltdown. Dr. Martinez scheduled me first, and I walked into her office feeling lighter than I had in months. How are you feeling about everything that happened last session? Dr. Martinez asked. Honestly? Vindicated. I've been living in crazy land for so long that I'd started to wonder if maybe I really was the problem. When did you start questioning yourself? Around year 3 of marriage. The accusations became so constant that I figured there had to be some truth to them. Maybe I was passive-aggressive, without realizing it. Maybe I didn't know how to love someone properly. That's a common response to emotional invalidation. When someone consistently tells you that your motivations aren't what you think they are, you begin to doubt your own perceptions. I stopped doubting after last week. How has she been since that session? Quiet, almost serene. She's going through the motions at home, but I can tell she's processing something. We're like roommates who happen to share a bed. How does that feel for you? Peaceful. Honestly, I'd forgotten what it was like to come home and not be on guard for the next accusation. During my wife's individual sessions, I waited in the parking lot. Through the office window, I could see lots of gesturing, tissue grabbing, and defensive posturing. The conversations were clearly not going her way. After her third individual session, she came out looking devastated. How did it go? I asked. She thinks I have control issues, my wife said flatly, and abandonment fears, and something called emotional dysregulation. How do you feel about that assessment? She looked surprised. You're asking how I feel instead of telling me what you think I should feel. I've always asked how you felt. You just usually told me I was being condescending. She was quiet. Dr. Martinez says I project my fears onto you, that I assume you're going to leave, so I create tests to prove you won't. But the tests are designed to fail. That makes sense. She also says I've been trying to control your emotional responses to manage my own anxiety. If I can make you react the right way, then I feel secure. She wants me to continue seeing her twice a week. Just me. We can go back to couple sessions once I work through my patterns. What did you tell her? That I'd think about it. I'm scared of what I'll find out about myself. Of whether I can actually change. It was the most honest thing she'd said in years. Dr. Martinez had given me homework too. Start setting clear boundaries instead of absorbing emotional outbursts. The first test came 2 days later. My wife came home in a mood and started her old routine of picking apart everything I'd done. Dishes, mail, plants, where I would have apologized. I tried something different. I can see you're upset, I said calmly. But I'm not going to be your emotional punching bag today. If you want to talk about what's really bothering you, I'm here. If you want to keep criticizing me, I'll be in the garage. She stared at me. You can't just walk away from conversations. I'm not walking away from conversations. I'm walking away from being attacked. I wasn't attacking you. You criticized 6 different things within 30 seconds of walking through the door. What would you call it? For a moment, I thought she'd escalate. Instead, she deflated. I had a terrible day at work. My boss humiliated me, and I came home looking for someone to take it out on. Thank you for being honest. Do you want to talk about what happened? And just like that, we had our first real conversation in months. Not about my failings or her needs, just about her day, her frustrations. Dr. Martinez noticed the change immediately in our next joint session. Both of you seem different today. We had a breakthrough, my wife said. I realized I was using him as a stress release valve, instead of dealing with my actual problems. I'm going to keep doing the individual sessions, she said as we left. I want to figure out why I've been so angry all the time. For the first time in months, she took my hand in the parking lot. Session 10 arrived faster than either of us expected. My wife had been attending individual therapy twice a week for the past month, and the change was remarkable. Not perfect, but remarkable. Dr. Martinez settled into her chair with what looked like satisfaction. So, we've reached our final session. How are you both feeling about the progress we've made? My wife spoke first, which surprised me. I feel like I've been living in a fog for years, and I'm finally starting to see clearly. The individual sessions showed me patterns I didn't even know I had. Can you elaborate on that? I was so focused on what he wasn't doing that I never looked at what I was doing. I created impossible situations and then got angry when he couldn't solve them. I made him responsible for my emotional state instead of managing it myself. Dr. Martinez turned to me. And your perspective? I feel validated. For years, I was told that every problem in our marriage was because I wasn't enough of something. Not caring enough, not trying enough, not loving enough. It's relieving to know that the problem wasn't my capacity for love. It was the impossible standards I was being held to. What's changed in your day-to-day interactions? My wife answered. I stopped expecting him to read my mind. When I need something, I ask directly instead of creating tests he doesn't know he's taking. And when I'm upset about something else, I deal with it instead of taking it out on him. And the results of those changes? We actually talk now, I said. Real conversations about real things, not arguments about imaginary problems. Dr. Martinez made her final notes. I'm going to be direct with both of you. When you first came in, I was concerned about the sustainability of your relationship. One person had created a dynamic where the other couldn't succeed no matter what they did. She looked at my wife. The work you've done in individual therapy has been impressive. You've identified patterns that were destructive to both of you, and you've made concrete changes. Then she turned to me. And you've learned to set healthy boundaries instead of absorbing emotional chaos. That's equally important. So what's your professional assessment? My wife asked. You have the tools now to build a healthier relationship. The question is whether you both want to use them consistently. As we left Dr. Martinez's office for the last time, my wife was quiet but not sullen, thoughtful. I owe you an apology, she said as we reached the car. A real one. I forced you into therapy because I was convinced you were the problem. I was wrong. I know. I created those 10 sessions thinking they would fix you. Instead, they fixed me. The irony isn't lost on me. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Respect. You knew, didn't you? When I demanded therapy, you knew it would backfire on me. I suspected that an objective professional would see through the narrative you'd created. I just wasn't sure it would happen so completely. Why didn't you fight me on it? Why didn't you refuse? Because sometimes the best way to prove a point is to let someone else make it for you. We drove home in comfortable silence. For the first time in our marriage, the quiet wasn't loaded with unspoken accusations or building tension. It was just quiet. The therapist said I should continue individual sessions for a while, she said as we pulled into our driveway. Good idea. And she said we should check in with couples therapy every few months just to maintain the progress, if you think that's necessary. She turned to face me. I put you through hell for 6 years because I couldn't manage my own emotions. I made you the villain in a story where you were trying to be the hero. How are you not furious with me? I considered the question. Because anger would be wasted energy. You've acknowledged the problem and you're working to fix it. That's more than most people do. I don't deserve your patience. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. As we walked into our house, the same house where she delivered her therapy ultimatum months ago, everything looked the same, but felt completely different. The tension that had hung in the air like smoke was gone. You know what's funny? She said, hanging up her coat. I spent 10 sessions trying to prove you needed fixing, and instead proved I was the one who was broken. You weren't broken. You just had some things to work through. No, she said firmly. I was broken, but maybe I'm starting to heal. 10 therapy sessions. Her idea, her demand, her ultimatum. And in the end, they gave us exactly what we needed, just not in the way she'd planned. Sometimes the best victories are the ones where everyone wins, even when they don't realize they're winning. Especially when they don't realize they're winning. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.